Hello, my Bill 4000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. We are back with another Coffeehouse Crime. This one is titled Depraved Killer Caught on Camera. Can you solve this case? If we put our combined brains together, we might be able to. All right, I'm excited to get into today's story. If you guys are excited as I am, go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, cup with something special. Let's get scarred. It's Coffeehouse Crime. I always come away from this a little scarred. Excuse me.
When Houston PD were faced with the task of piecing together a nightmarish crime scene, they were left with this haunting surveillance footage. The man can be seen strolling up to an elevator, and 23 minutes later, he leaves the apartment complex just as calmly. But sadly, in this time frame, he had murdered 20-year-old Shelby Thornburg. Armed with this surveillance footage and other articles of evidence, detectives believed it would be easy to find her killer. But sadly, this was a meticulously rehearsed operation. So, who was Shelby Thornburg? Why was she targeted for murder? And will she ever receive justice? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at a case that'll leave you thinking about it for days on end. Shelby Thornburg was a beautiful young woman starting her new life in the big city when, all of a sudden, tragedy stopped her in her tracks. But the terrifying thing is, you may actually know who the killer is. So, with that in mind, pay careful attention to the surveillance footage. By the way, Coffeehouse Crime is all about true crime,
What?
strange and chilling stories, and the best way to support me is by subscribing to the channel. So, if you want to see more stories like this, please do remember to subscribe. I also try to respond to most
Is it because we don't know who the killer is, so we actually might know who the killer is, and if we do, we need to be like 911? Is that?
comments in the first hour of all videos going live, so if you want to catch me, hit the bell notification too. But before we begin, Nero and I would love to talk about this video's sponsor, Audible. Now, as a viewer of Coffeehouse Crime, you are quite clearly here for true crime. However, have you ever listened to mysteries and terrifying thrillers in audio format? Audible is the world's leader in audio entertainment, audiobooks, podcasts, and Audible originals, especially for those.
I love books. I hate reading. And I know I do read more than what I want, but I have dyslexia, and it gets very, very frustrating for me to read. It's not that I don't like to read. It's just I end up getting very angry at myself because whenever I'm reading, I got to concentrate so much on what I'm reading that I don't remember what I read. And then I got to read a book like 4 or 5 times just to memorize it so I can read it and know what it is. So I'm not a big fan. I like for people to read me stories. I always have.
Interested in the mystery and thriller genres. I'm working my way through Lone Wolf by Greg Hurwitz. It's a crime thriller that follows a once Black Book government assassin who finds himself in the hands of a horrendously difficult mission. If you're looking for a story with depth, then this is a great one to check out. And Scott Brick's voice was perfect for the job. Oh, and if you don't believe me, then you might just have to take Nero's word for it.
Opening a door that could never again be shut. He stepped up onto the porch, the sagging boards rasping against the soles of his boots. Once he knocked on that door, he could never undo it. He searched for his breath.
This is just one of many extraordinarily special titles, which has a must-have collection of the latest and greatest in the thriller genre. New members can get a free trial and full access to a growing selection of included audiobooks, Audible originals, and podcasts. And to add to that, you can even download all included titles all you want. Go to audible.com/coffeehousecrime or text coffeehousecrime to 500-500 for your free trial. That's audible.com/coffeehousecrime or text coffeehousecrime to 500-500. Thank you to Audible for
Can I get that if I already have that?
sponsoring this video, and thank you to you folks for supporting us content creators. Now let's get straight back to this case. And now, with all of that said, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Shelby Thornburg.
And as I always say, if you don't already have an amazing mug, a coffee cup, just for your specific coffee needs, go over to the Bill 5000 merch store. Check out a wide variety of coffee cups. I have several. I like my coffee. And if you would like to join me in being able to drink some of your best coffee out of one of your best mugs, watching one of your favorite YouTubers, then jump on over to the Bill 5000 merch store. Get yourself a B5 Nation mug. Also have it in the Demon Slayer, so you can get one to match your shirt. Did I do good? I think I did good.
Welcome to Houston, folks. Known as the 4th largest city in the US, the energy capital of the world, and home to the largest medical complex in the world, Houston likes to pride itself on size, which is fitting for its extraordinarily large personality. This city's vibrancy is due to several factors. I mean, for one, it is one of the fastest growing cities in the country, bringing in an eclectic mix of various cultures. Now, America is well known to have an incredible food scene, but Texas really does like to push those boundaries. Jump in a car and travel 12 miles west on the I-69 from Houston Center, and you will find yourself in Sharpstown, a small neighborhood packed with noodle bars, dumpling houses, and many other Asian eateries. Back in the year 2015, Sharpstown was well known for its food, shopping, and arena theater. It's a great place for meeting up, sharing some good comfort food.
See, I can eat Asian cuisine, I guess, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese. I can eat that type of food every day. Now, the old lady, she can eat like Italian foods. Like, she loves her pastas and stuff. I hate pastas. I like my lo mein noodles and stuff like that, but if I have to pick between lo mein noodles or spaghetti, I'm going for lo mein noodles. Vegetable lo mein.
Foods and having a friendly catch-up. However, by the dawn of November the 5th, the neighborhood woke up to a terrible story. At 9:54 p.m. on November the 4th, 2015, the Houston Police Department received a phone call from a devastated boyfriend. He called the police to report that his partner hadn't been responding to his messages. In light of her silence, he returned home to check in on her, and sadly, that is when he found her body in the living room. There was no doubt that this was no accident. His girlfriend had been murdered in cold blood. Police officers were dispatched to the property, where they then found a chaotic scene. A small single bed was set up in the living room next to the sofa. Here, they found the lifeless body of Shelby Thornburg slumped over the bed, and it was evident that she had suffered a violent end. A large 6-inch wound was observed horizontally across her neck. The wound had cut into her left jugular vein, punctured her left carotid artery, and extended through the soft tissue to her C3 and C5 vertebrae. And with such a violent and deep injury, it is no doubt that she had died from loss of blood. Shelby was naked and face down at the time that she died, with her lingerie found beside the bed, indicating that her murder was very likely to be sexually charged or motivated. And in addition to this, she also had multiple defense wounds on her hands, wrists, and shoulders. Shelby's murder was sure to devastate the lives of all who knew her, but it wouldn't hit anyone more than her sister, Christina, for reasons we'll get into in just a moment. Christina couldn't believe the news when she heard it, and after receiving that phone call at 4 a.m. in the morning, she rushed to Houston to try and find her sister. It was only after she reached the apartment, saw the police, and then verified Shelby's ID that things really started to hit her. Her little sister had been murdered, and now there was no way back. Living in multiple places throughout her life, various people would come, leave, and remain in Shelby's circle. And of course, the police would review all of them in the months forward. But before we look at who her killer potentially is, let's first look at Shelby herself. Shelby was born on August 18th, 1995 in Wise County, Texas. She was the second and youngest daughter of her father, Robert, and mother, Leslie, and her older sister, Christina, completed the biological family of 4. Now sadly, both Shelby and Christina grew up in a broken home. For most of their younger childhood, their father, who by all counts sounds like a terrible human being, was in prison for unknown charges. As a result, her mother was left to look after 2 daughters, and while they initially shared a pleasant life together, she would sadly eventually slip into the world of drug addiction, meaning that more often than not, they were on the run from CPS. The damage caused to Shelby and Christina in their
No child should have to live like that. I'm not saying they would be better off in like state's care or anything by any means. It's all a shitty situation, but that constantly, these 2 lovely young girls constantly have to run because of that pisses me off. I'm sorry, it does.
Their childhood was irreversible, and soon enough, her mother would lose custody of the
Fucking let kids be kids, bro.
2. As a result, both sisters were in and out of foster homes quite frequently, and no surprise, the system would routinely fail them. Christina faced abuse from her foster carers, and when their monster of a father finally got out of prison, he made things even worse by abusing and renting out both of his 2 daughters. This traumatic moment in their lives created a very solid and inseparable bond between Christina and Shelby. With the world seemingly against them, they knew that they could at least rely on each other, and so it's no surprise that both girls became the best of friends. As the older sister, Christina took on a motherly role over Shelby, a kind and nurturing trait that, to this day, she still harbors. But focusing on Shelby, the stress and trauma she experienced in her younger years certainly did seem to cause some psychological damage. As a result, she battled depression throughout her childhood.
Bro, she probably fucked up from life. Like, I don't know what he means by the dad was renting them out, but what's coming into my head really, really angers me to no end. I'm sorry. Like, I've had many suggestions and many requests for, like, hey, Bill, react to... I hate reacting to stuff like this. I do. Oh, man. I just...
And this depression ultimately forced her to lean on food for comfort. By her late teens, she had gained more than 300 pounds despite her small height of 5 feet and 1 inch. Which is fine, be whatever weight you'd like to be.
Yeah.
But for Shelby, this did not correspond well with her aspirations. You see, Shelby wanted to become a model. And so, with that goal in mind, she decided to set her sights on a radical weight loss journey. Now, Shelby's determination was absolute.
Look, I don't see people by size, shape, color. I really don't. I like people who have amazing attitudes, great personalities. I don't give a shit how big you are, how small you are, how old you are, how young you are, what color you are. That shit don't matter. So if you want to change anything about yourself, it should be for yourself, not for anyone else. Be a healthier person for yourself. Be a kinder person for yourself. Be the person you want to be. Don't try to do it for someone else. It never lasts. I'm sorry, but even when she was a bigger girl, I thought she was a beautiful, beautiful lady. For me, personality is a lot. It plays a big role. Don't get me wrong. Yes, I know. I'm not going to be at the bar, at the club going, oh, she looks like she got a funny sense of humor. Oh, hey, baby, how you doing? No. It's the eyes that always get me. Eyes. If the eyes are good, I'm good. That's how the old lady got me. Them puppy dog eyes.
Solid. She began to diet correctly, go to the gym multiple times a week, and do plenty of cardio. And in less than 2 years, she managed to lose more than 180 pounds. A very
Very amazing. Hells yeah. That's great. That's great, because that shit's not easy.
impressive result for anyone on a personal weight loss journey. So it is no surprise that Shelby found fresh confidence in her transformation, and there were plenty more reasons for her to be happy, as her weight loss journey was not the only thing going well for her. Around this time frame, she also decided to start a new life in the city and away from her demons. As a result, she moved into Conquistador apartment complex, which can be found on Bel Air Boulevard in Sharpstown. The high-rise was considered to be relatively luxurious at the time, and wasn't too far from the city centre. To add to this, and to tie everything together, Shelby had also found a boyfriend of sorts, a man named Marcus Dwayne Johnson. Sadly, this is where her story begins to unravel, but before we get there, I first have to tell you what she was planning to do next with her life, so you better understand her position. Now, Shelby was very happy with her weight loss, but as you can imagine, such a rapid transformation left her with some excess skin. With her aspirations of being a model, she felt she needed to remove that excess skin through surgery, and with surgery costing in the thousands, she needed to find the money.
I was 365 pounds. I fluctuate anywhere from 155 to 165 pounds now. The extra loose skin, it's a real thing. You get fat flaps everywhere. Mine ain't going nowhere. No, I don't want surgeries to get rid of mine. Man, I was 360. I lost 200 pounds in like a little over a year. That's my badge. That's my medal. It wasn't fun. It wasn't easy. It was hard as shit. It was a lot of work. I am down to a healthy weight. I have a very healthy lifestyle. I did it appropriately. It's the loose skin and the flaps. I mean, I was so big and now I'm so small that my butt cheeks look like mud flaps on the back of a truck. I'm thinking about getting tattoos of the naked ladies on each cheek.
First. And it turns out that Marcus was not actually her boyfriend. I mean, they may have had some sort of relationship to begin with, but now he was essentially her pimp. And as for that luxurious apartment that she was renting, well, it was actually part financed through him. Now, initially, her family had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. To them, she was in a committed relationship with Marcus, and although her sister would eventually find out, she was not comfortable with the situation. However, as you likely know, this sort of industry is extremely hard to get out of, and certainly not one that can happen just overnight. Shortly after moving to Houston and into this apartment complex, Shelby became a high-end escort, taking on male clients who would pay her for her services from the comfort of her own home. Now, Marcus would arrange all customers and appointments for her, taking a cut of the money for himself, which also helped to pay for the apartment. Unfortunately, this temptation to make good money from her escort services eventually led her to being arrested in 2014 over charges related to prostitution. And after being arrested for a second time later that year, her secret would slip out to the rest of her family. The news horrified many who knew and cared for her. And all the same, Shelby herself was scared to leave the industry that she was now stuck in. It wasn't the type of work that she wanted to remain in forever, but at least for now, it was a temporary means to an end. As we all know, this sort of work comes with a cocktail of risks and dangers.
Yeah.
And her vulnerability was further propelled by the fact that she was bringing her clientele back to the same property she lived in. However, Shelby was stuck, and she had no way of leaving the industry, both for financial and safety reasons. And tragically, all of this would end in the worst way imaginable. So, what possibly could have happened to Shelby that night? Who was responsible for her death? And what were the clues left behind? To begin with the way that a body was found, it was likely that this happened either shortly before, during, or after consensual sex, meaning that her killer was likely a client. And so obviously, all eyes were on Marcus. After all, he was the one that would usually introduce her to all of her clients. The authorities...
So he was her boyfriend / pimp? Or was he just her pimp? Man, I'm sorry, but I could never just pimp my girl out for any reason. Nope, that made me gag a little bit. Ew. I mean, he's a big dude. Like, shouldn't he be like somewhere out in the hall making sure, like, if she screams in the wrong way, he can come busting in and beat the shit out of a motherfucker?
were sure to grill him on several occasions, and I'm sure he went through hours of interrogation. But either way, he had no idea who her killer was. In fact, all communication was over the phone and not in person. As for Marcus himself, well, he had a rock-solid alibi. An alibi that was confirmed and approved after being meticulously scrutinized by authorities. And so, without any obvious suspects, detectives began to look into this case with a much finer lens. After carefully reviewing the crime scene, detectives concluded that the murder was very carefully planned and meticulously executed by her assailant. Despite being inside of the property for a generous amount of time, no fingerprints were left behind. And despite the rather intimate situation, no bodily fluids were left behind either. In fact, only one trace of DNA could be found at the crime scene. However, after running it through both local and national databases, the DNA yielded no conclusive results. But officers would find several other clues and articles of evidence that would help build a picture of her assailant. In fact, they were even fortunate enough to find surveillance footage of who they think murdered Shelby. Found within this surveillance footage, and at 8:34 p.m, a man was spotted walking through the main lobby of the Conquistador. The man was white, wearing a light-colored jumper, shorts, trainers, and sunglasses. He can be seen walking calmly toward the elevators, before briefly sitting down at the end of the lobby. Interestingly, he can then be seen leaving the apartment complex 22 minutes later. Looking at videos from the hotel online, this is confirmed to be from the elevator door which led up to her apartment. It is noted that he is just as calm as before, and wearing the same clothes as when he entered. During this time frame, he kept his left hand in his pocket, suggesting that he may have been trying to hide a wound, or perhaps even a weapon. Furthermore, his body language leaves several suggestions behind. Although he appears to be calm, he can be seen with his head down at 8:57 minutes and 1 second, indicating either embarrassment or guilt. To add to this, hiding his hand in his pocket could also be an automatic gesture made through guilt or discomfort. Throughout his exit, he refuses to make eye contact with anyone to his left, and the sunglasses, which are on his face at almost 9 p.m. at night, makes it obvious that he didn't want anyone to recognize or remember his face. So,
well, okay, he was there to meet an escort. God only knows how many people was there to meet an escort. Maybe he just didn't want people like knowing he was who he was. I'm not saying either. Okay, like, I'm not saying he didn't kill her. I'm not saying he did kill her. I'm not saying who did, who didn't. I don't know. I was not there. I'm just saying, like, maybe if he wasn't the one, maybe he just felt a little awkward meeting an escort, and just after he was done doing his due and paying for it, maybe he did feel a little dirty, a little ashamed, and he just didn't want to make eye contact with people. I mean, how many men out there after they're done making love to their lady rolls over and cries? I'm not one, but I'm sure there's some out there. Does that make them weirdos? No, that just means they're a really emotional person. They gets all caught up in the feelings, and it's like, I just want to play devil's advocate for a little bit.
with all of this information at hand, detectives believed that they finally had a lead, and that eventually they would lock their sights on a suspect. Well, unfortunately, I have some bad news for you. because despite this happening almost 9 years ago, they still haven't found her killer. Yeah, this is one of those infuriating cases where, despite having surveillance footage of the killer's face and body, nothing has come from it. Those near him when he walked into the lobby have no idea who he was, and supposedly, Marcus doesn't either. So, let's look a little closer at that surveillance footage. But first, let me tell you what the authorities found on Shelby's phone. It was learned that throughout November the 4th, Shelby had been in contact with a man who had found her on Backpage. Now, Backpage was a website mainly known as a place where sex workers could advertise their services. Interesting side note here, but 3 former owners of the Backpage website were convicted last year for their roles in enabling prostitution and money laundering through the domain. The 4th co-founder, James Larkin, ended his own life before he could stand trial. Her advertisement, which was found by true crime YouTuber and journalist Gavin Fish, says that she was a blonde beauty who promised satisfaction. In and out calls were available, and her phone number was included on the advertisement. Now, interestingly, the man that she was in contact over that day was the same person to visit her that night. Focusing on the timeline, at 8 PM, Shelby's aunt messaged her to ask for a chat. Shelby responded with, "Can't talk right now, about to meet a client, I'm working." At 8:06 PM, Shelby's new client told her, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. 1 minute later, at 8:07 PM, she replied with, "Okay." At 8:33 PM, he then messaged her again to say, "Hey, I'm here." And only 1 minute later, at 8:34 PM, he was seen walking through the lobby while checking his phone. He then proceeded to sit at the back of the lobby, and although the surveillance footage that is available to the public then cuts out, we can only assume that he made it to Shelby's apartment. 6 minutes later, at 8:40 PM, Shelby then messaged Marcus to say good. Marcus later explained that this was code to indicate that everything was okay, and that Shelby was comfortable with her current client. This is crucial information to have, because it later indicates that everything was fine during the moment her killer entered the apartment. And this, in combination with no signs of forced entry, does suggest that her killer had deceived her into believing that he was just a regular behaving client. Unfortunately, Marcus would never hear back from Shelby after that. We know, due to the autopsy, that she was murdered shortly after this message, and only 17 minutes after indicating that everything was okay, her client calmly left the apartment complex, never to be seen again. After failing to respond to any of his messages, Marcus then travelled back to her apartment before finding her lifeless body shortly before 10 PM. At this point in their investigation, the authorities firmly believed that they would eventually catch her killer. I mean, surveillance footage aside, they now had a phone number too. However, her killer clearly knew what he was doing, because not only had he purchased it shortly before her murder, but he'd also bought it in cash and without any personal details attached. In short, it was a burner phone, and now there was no way for the authorities to track him down. To add to this, the phone was destroyed almost immediately after the murder too, being turned off, never to be used again. And so in short, it was almost impossible to know who it belonged to. All of this evidence highly suggests that Shelby's killer was acting with clear intent to murder her, and a flawless plan to evade the authorities. And sadly, it gets even worse. It turns out that, in the weeks prior to Shelby's murder, this guy had been reaching out to other sex workers in the area, and they all seemed to fit Shelby's profile too, being both blonde and petite. This means that he was clearly out to murder someone and had even specified a path for it. What's more, it looks like Shelby's murder wasn't personal. Now, there are plenty of rumours and even valid theories to suggest that maybe Shelby was targeted, either for herself or to get back at Marcus, but at least this article of evidence would suggest otherwise. Once again focusing on our surveillance footage, it's incredibly frustrating to know so many visual details about Shelby's killer without any success in finding him. We're all used to looking at surveillance footage that looks like it was recorded with a potato. But this camera was pretty high quality for 2015. I mean, we have the killer's face, jawline, hairline, color complexion, gait, and even more. Now, due to his physique and his posture, it is safe to assume that he was in good shape. This has led some to believe that he may be in the military or law enforcement. But sadly, no one has been able to identify him through any of these images. And the use of image enhancement and even AI hasn't helped either. The way that her murder was so meticulously conducted has also led many to believe that Shelby may have been the victim of a serial killer. Now, it is plausible, though many have highlighted
Really?
that no other victims have been identified in the area. One other and more likely theory is that Shelby may have been targeted for murder by a hitman. It is noted that in the weeks leading up to her death, she had grown increasingly scared for her safety and her future. After being arrested for prostitution twice in the same year, she knew that she had to find a new way of earning money. Unfortunately, it is an incredibly difficult industry to leave due to various power complexities often found between escorts and their pimps. I mean, in June 2015, Shelby was arrested. In November, she was murdered. And in December, a substantial undercover operation caused the arrest of more than 20 escorts and pimps in the local area. And so, with so much tension in the industry at the time of her death, it is
This is all going
possible that
crazy.
Shelby was chosen to take the hit and assassinated by a hitman to save others from being arrested. Her sister believes that she may have been an informant for officers at the time of her death, which of course would have placed a massive target on her back if others knew about
Damn,
it. Despite
man.
all of the evidence available and the many theories that circulate around this case, Shelby's killer still remains free to this day. Now, before I finish this case, there is one other issue to talk about, and unfortunately, it rests with law enforcement. After her death, Shelby's sister was faced with the horrific task of cleaning up the crime scene. And tragically, she would be the one to wipe her sister's blood off the floor and wall. It was during her cleanup that she noticed several items that should have been taken in as evidence, most notably the doormat outside of the property. With the hallways being so dimly lit, it was quite difficult to see what may or may not have been on that doormat. However, after taking it back to her own home, she noticed it had a red patch on it. But after calling the Houston Police Department to tell them that there might be blood on the doormat, they told her that it was now too late to submit as evidence. Advice that would actually turn out to be incorrect. Although it isn't clear what that red stain was, Christina firmly believes it was blood. And with her killer walking away with a concealed hand, likely because it may have been injured, this might have actually solved the case. Now, although it is true that any DNA match coming from the doormat would have been disqualified as admissible evidence in court, it could have potentially helped track her killer down. What can I say? This is yet another example where miscommunication inside law enforcement has potentially jeopardized a case.
Yep.
Now, as usual, these mistakes come down to a lack of training, but by the time they are realized, it is simply too late. No doubt, Shelby had an incredibly rough upbringing, only saved from oblivion by her gentle and nurturing sister. Christina is everything a sister could ask for, but even still, she couldn't save Shelby from a challenging industry's
that
worst
eats her up
nightmare.
every
It's
day,
important
too.
to remember here that Shelby was much more than just a sex worker. It is quite natural, but us humans love to categorize and label
No. She was a human being that was doing what she had to do to survive. I mean, it even said, she wanted to get out of it and stuff. Look, I'm never going to knock a sex worker for doing what they have to do. OnlyFans model, whatever you have to do to make your money, to get you through this shitty ass existence, do. Life is hard. Don't let people stereotype you into making your life harder. Okay? It ain't worth it. Do what you got to do to keep you alive. People sitting there telling you you shouldn't do something because it makes you less than isn't feeding you, isn't paying for your bills. You know what I mean? So do what you got to do. Just be safe. Be very safe. Take precautions. people. Always.
People as a means to better understand and perceive others. However, one problem with that is that it often clouds our perception and judgment of people. Shelby was a very loving, kind, and generous person, and friends and family describe her as funny, loving, and caring. Despite coming from a childhood that would destroy most of us, Shelby emerged to be ambitious, determined, and resilient. Quite clearly, she was a strong woman who wouldn't let anything get in the way of what she wanted. But tragically, bad fortune would find her towards the end of her long and difficult journey. Her unsolved murder haunts her family to this very day. This surveillance footage undoubtedly plays on repeat in the minds of her loved ones, when, in reality, all we need is for everyone to see this footage just once. Somebody out there knows something. Time may fade your memory, and it may even help cleanse a guilty conscience. But the nightmare, pain, and anguish that Christina and the rest of Shelby's family feel is never-ending, and so, hopefully, one day, a stranger will help them finally be at peace. A $5,000 reward is available for any information leading to Shelby Thornburg's killer. Contact Crime Stoppers at 713-222-TIPS. That's 713-222-8477. If you believe you may know Shelby's killer, or simply know anything that may help solve this case, then I strongly advise you give them a call. Seriously folks, I've covered hundreds of cases and researched thousands more, and let me tell you, it is never too late to solve a case. And you know, the infuriating thing about this story is that this one is actually solvable. All we need is the right person to see that surveillance footage. Now, before I wrap this one up, I want to give an honourable mention to Gavin Fish, who has tirelessly worked with Shelby's sister to bring this case to the public. If you're looking for brilliant research and journalism, then I thoroughly recommend you check out his YouTube channel. Anyway folks, I think that pretty much concludes our story today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure being here, Adrian. Oh, lordy. I told you this is going to get fucked up. Coffeehouse Crimes always fucks me up. Never fucking fails, bro. Man. It could have been anyone or anything. Like, that could have all been set up. Man, that... Alright. I really enjoyed today's video, though. If you all enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please go down there, leave a thumbs up. It really does help the channel grow. While you're down there going over, slap the subscribe button. Become part of the Build for 1,000 Nation. We do some crazy shit here. And if you want to know when that crazy shit happens, ding that bell. It might work for you. It might not. But if it do, jump in on one of my premieres, go over in the live chat and be like, what's up, Bill? I got dinged. The ding's so good. The dinging ain't stopped. Leave a like and dip. That's all you got to do. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Damn, Adrian. That was fuckered, bro.